και τελικά αυτοί να εισαγάγουν βδελίγματα μέσα στην Εκκλησία. Όποιος συνδέει το χριστιανισμό με τον μαρξισμό είναι το υπόλοιπο της πόλεως, το υπόλοιπο της Εκκλησίας, που δεν θα σωθεί, διότι πρόκειται περί βδελίγματος. Είναι βδέλιγμα. Εγώ θα το καταθέτω. Όποιος θέλει ας το ακούσει.
Ενώ στα μαρτύρια των εσχάτων θα έχουμε επηρεασμό και της ψυχής, και οι μέθοδοι θα είναι σατανικότερες. Γιατί? Διότι θα σου βάζει χημικά πράγματα μέσα σου και θα σε παραλύει το νου, τη βούληση, θα σου παραμορφώνει το συναίσθημα και θα σου αποπροσανατολίζει τον νου. Εφόσον εκοσμικεύτηκε ο χριστιανισμός, τα πράγματα είναι ασαφή. Η πίστης είναι ασαφής. Και το σπουδαίο είναι ότι θα υπάρχει το θαύμα ως δαιμονικό στοιχείο. Θαύματα θα κάνει ο Αντίχριστος.
The world of medicine has seen its share of miracle cures, from the polio vaccine to heart transplants, but all past achievements may pale in comparison to the work of Dr. Alice Crippen. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, Dr. Crippen, give it to me in a nutshell.
Well, the premise is quite simple. Take something designed by nature and reprogram it to make it work for the body rather than against it.
You're talking about a virus?
Indeed, yes, in this case the measles virus, which has been engineered at a genetic level to be helpful rather than harmful.
And how many people have you treated so far?
Well, we've had 10,009 clinical trials in humans so far.
And how many are cancer-free?
10,009.
So you have actually cured cancer?
Yes, yes. Yes, we have.
With great sadness, but even greater resolve, that tonight I have signed an executive order initiating a military quarantine of New York City.
He said there's one thing in the world more wicked than the desire to command, and that is the will to obey. What we've seen with the crisis of the past 8-9 months, which was precipitated by the COVID-19 pandemic, was precisely this phenomenon. The willingness to obey on the one side, contrasted with the desire to command. The greater the compliance, the craven desire or willingness to obey, the more strident becomes the voice of authority. And this, I think, can almost be expressed as an axiom. It is, unfortunately, I think, also a truism and an accurate commentary on human nature. If the person who is being bullied does not fight back, does not put up any resistance, then the bullying will continue and will intensify. And what we've seen, in fact, over the past several months is an increase in political bullying. Now, the thing that one finds that all of the people who speak about the Great Reset have in common is that there are similar characteristics in their vision of what lies ahead. The one is inevitably, I suppose, a desire to dictate a new dispensation in regard to the climate crisis. In this regard, one of the other proponents of a Great Reset, none other than Prince Charles, has repeatedly said that this is an opportunity for us as a world to undertake this important reset in respect of the climate crisis, as he calls it. Klaus Schwab has a slightly different emphasis. His emphasis is more upon the economic and the consequent ideal, in his mind, of equality, of worldwide equality. And this, he recognizes, can only be brought about as a result of some form of world authority. Now, the first question that would naturally occur to one is, by what authority does he speak? Whoever elected him to speak on behalf of what he perceives to be the future of the world? Whoever authorized him to speak in such strident terms? Well, the answer is he authorized himself. One of the visuals that was made available was a visual of a poster, a Soviet-style poster, which contained these words: "You will own nothing and you will be happy." I think those words require some reflection. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, the happiness sounds like a very benign and benevolent concept. But in order to get there, in order to achieve this nirvana, one will have to give up one's ownership. One will have to give up the idea of personal ownership. And of course, inevitably, one will have to give up the idea of personal and individual liberty, because liberty and the right to property go hand in hand. So, in fact, what we have here is a Soviet-style command. Is that it is a consequence of the philosophy of the one world, which is a philosophy which is at least 100 years old, and which included such notables as Bertrand Russell. Now, you will recall that Bertrand Russell was probably, almost certainly regarded as the foremost English philosopher of the last century. What he had in mind was that the world should devolve into a single world state, where everybody would be equal. But of course, what we know from experience, from observation, if not experience, is that this utopian ideal of a one world of equality, an egalitarian one world, inevitably goes hand in hand with totalitarianism, and that inevitably gives rise to a total loss of liberty, of every conceivable liberty. Bertrand Russell was undeterred by any of this, and in fact he was one of the English academics and intellectuals who really regarded the Soviet system with some admiration. Among others, there was George Bernard Shaw, who had a similar attitude in this regard. This is what Bertrand Russell proposed. He said that what is required is that as this new system, this brave new world is set up, we will need to do a division of the world into different localities, not nations, but localities, which is based upon convenience and usefulness and utility and so on. And those localities will then be audited for population and for their requirements. And this audit will then be placed on record, and it will form the ground rules of future behavior in regard to each of the localities and the individuals living within those localities. The food of the world, said Russell, would then be distributed by a central authority, well, no surprises there, and the central authority would distribute the food according to the population and the population intensity of each of these locations at the time when the audit was done. Then said Russell that if any of these localities should exceed the assigned population growth rate for the various localities over a given period of time, they would not receive more food on that account. They would receive the allocation which they were justly entitled to, and therefore they would find themselves short of food. Well, it wasn't necessary for Russell to spell out the consequence of that iniquitous philosophy. What Russell had in mind was that each locality would be starved into submission, or at least that starvation was a perfectly legitimate device. So we find the phenomenon of authoritarian dictatorship in every conceivable intellectual pursuit. And there's no doubt that Marx was an intellectual of sorts. There's no doubt that various individuals, such as Russell and George Bernard Shaw, were clearly intellectual, but that didn't save them from falling into this dreadful Marxist authoritarian trap. Now, if anybody should think that this dystopian vision that I've sketched is too bad to be true, then just consider the situation in South Africa. Interestingly enough, Ramaphosa and the ANC have been perfectly candid about their program, about what they have in mind. They haven't hidden, for instance, the ideal for them of expropriation without compensation. They haven't hidden in any way at all. In fact, it's been reaffirmed from time to time, the demand for a national democratic revolution, all of which is Marxist language. All of this is, in fact, written into their policies, and they repeat these policies from time to time. What is surprising is that people do not take these things more seriously. Of course, the Ramaphosa said that this is a process whereby the frog is boiled incrementally. Of course, a stage is reached when the frog expires, and that's the opportunity that the ANC is waiting for the expiration of the boiling frog. And when that happens, their policies will be fully implemented, and nobody will be able to say, we didn't know, because we did. We knew because we were told. We didn't have to speculate about the prospect of expropriation without compensation or about the national democratic revolution. All of it was written down. It was part of the policy. The outcome will most surely be a total loss of liberty, a total loss of property rights, and we will be, in the language of the poster, we will own nothing and we will be happy. We will be happy according to diktat. The problem with the democracy that we have is that those who can read don't count, and those who can't read don't care. Of warning. What we need to do is to warn ourselves about the seriousness of the situation and about its imminence. Because when the frog expires, the ANC will do what it has said it will do. Thank you.